Astrology isn't just about signs and symbols. It's a tool for navigating real life. Hello, and welcome to Astrology with Alisa. I'm your host, Alisa Dixon, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Oh my gosh, you guys, we did it. We made it through eclipse number 1, and I will say the full moon was beautiful in the night sky. If you remember last week's episode, I talked about the eclipse energy building with Uranus loud in the background. Well, this week, I am living proof of it because that eclipse hit my chart directly and the clarity came crashing in a way I hadn't expected, very Uranus style. And despite the fact that I truly have a love-hate relationship with Uranus, this is what I love most about doing this podcast, sharing how astrology shows up in real life. Because when you can see it working in someone else's story, you start to recognize it in your own. And here's my surprise lunar eclipse story from this week. First of all, I've always felt like I live on a pendulum, swinging all the way to one side, then swinging back through the middle, and then all the way to the other side. And so on and so on. And that's not random. It's literally written in my chart. I have 3 planets in Aries and 3 planets in Libra, all sitting opposite each other. That's called an opposition. And oppositions always ask us to look at balance. Aries says me, my direction, my independence. Libra says us, partnership, harmony, fairness. Oppositions don't cancel each other out. They create tension, a constant back and forth pull that's always pushing you to find your center. And for me, this has been one of the biggest themes of my life, balancing me and what I want or need with others and what they want or need. It shows up in just about every relationship I have. That's why the pendulum analogy fits so well. Because living with this energy can feel like I'm swinging too far into Aries and then too far into Libra and then back again. Honestly, it's exhausting, but oppositions are invitations. They're here to teach us balance and to help us integrate both sides instead of living in extremes. And this eclipse on Sunday only amplified that theme for me. Because a full moon eclipse is an opposition too. The sun and the moon sitting across from each other, illuminating what's out of balance and asking us to release and realign. And this one, with the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces, landed right on my natal Mercury in Pisces. Mercury is a personal planet. It rules my thoughts, my words, my communication. So of course, it came through loud and clear. And this wasn't the first time an eclipse shifted my path this year. Back in March, the eclipses activated my Aries planets, my Sun, Venus, and Mars. And because those planets sit opposite my Libra planets, my Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, all of that oppositional energy in my chart was triggered too. It was like the universe lit up both ends of the seesaw at once. And it felt like a massive new beginning, touching most of my natal planets. The urgency was undeniable. I had to get my podcast out into the world. No excuses. And I did. I launched fast, and it felt exactly right. But the story didn't stop there, because just a few months later, on July 7th, Uranus entered Gemini for the first time in 84 years. And just a few days later, I uploaded my very first YouTube video. That timing was no accident. Gemini rules communication, ideas, and how we share our voice. And Uranus is the disruptor. It shakes us out of our ruts. It breaks the patterns that keep us stuck, and it pushes us into something new. For me, that meant breaking through my own hesitation about video. I had always told myself, not yet, I'm not ready. YouTube isn't for me. But with Uranus moving into Gemini, all of a sudden, the fear was gone. I felt free to try something different, free to put myself out there in a new way. So I stepped into video. And out of that spark, the Astro Bestie chats were born. And it was exciting and fun. The momentum felt fast, and it carried me forward in ways that I hadn't expected. But then came this weekend, the turn, the surprise I didn't see coming. Because right as this Virgo Pisces eclipse was hitting my Mercury, Uranus stationed to go retrograde. Literally, it all happened in the same weekend. And on Monday, the day after the eclipse, I woke up with total clarity. It felt like the eclipse had burst the energetic bubble that had been building for weeks. And suddenly, the message was totally in my face. You are moving too fast in the wrong direction. This isn't sustainable. I needed to put a pause on the Astro Bestie chats. Retrogrades always ask us to pause, to redo, revisit, and reevaluate what's been set in motion. And this message landed like a lightning bolt. That's Uranus. Sudden, shocking, but clarifying. And the kicker here, I knew Uranus was all over this lunation cycle. I even talked about it last week. But Uranus always manages to surprise you even when you're expecting it. I was on the lookout for Uranus this week, and it still caught me off guard. And I never would have guessed it would be this. When I told my daughter Lily on Monday morning, I think I need to stop doing the Astro Bestie chats, she looked at me so surprised and said, "But Mom, you love doing those." And she's right. I do love them. The connection with my Astro Besties has been pure joy. Sharing not just my stories, but weaving in theirs too. That's been so meaningful. Adding layers upon layers to how astrology shows up in real life, not just in my own life with my own stories, but through their lives and stories as well. But here's the thing. Uranus may have dropped the shock, but the real message came from Saturn. This isn't sustainable. The chats were magic, but the hours of editing, the endless video tweaks, the self-imposed deadlines, that part was draining. And because I've got a Capricorn moon and rising, my default is discipline, consistency, achievement, making things polished, which meant I was burning myself out, trying to produce high-quality video every single week. And Saturn, the ruler of my chart, finally said, no more. A week before the eclipse, Saturn retrograded back into Pisces, which is my third house of communication. That's the same part of my chart where my Aries planets live. And when Saturn revisits old territory, he asks for adjustment, finishing work, refining structures. So it clicked. The hours I was pouring into editing videos weren't the structure Saturn wanted me to build. He was asking me to simplify, strip it back, focus on the foundation. And then, with the eclipse falling right on my Mercury, my planet of thoughts, words, and my voice, the clarity hit my body as much as my mind. This podcast is my core. It's home base. It's my priority. It's where I belong. But here's the thing. YouTube isn't going anywhere either. Not at all. I have Mercury in Pisces. I'm a visual learner myself, and I know many of you are too. Sometimes we need to see things, not just hear them, to really understand. So I'm still going to create video for the visual learners out there, but in a way that feels supportive, in the way that fits my energy and flows naturally alongside this podcast. Video will still be part of the mix, but on a rhythm that feels grounded and sustainable. Because this eclipse, with Uranus and Saturn working together, brought me back to what matters most: my podcast, my family, and my sanity. And just to be clear, my Astro Besties and I are still rock solid. For those of you who loved the Astro Bestie chats, don't worry, they are not gone forever. We're just on pause. And you'll definitely hear from them again in a way that feels organic and in timing that makes sense. So that's my surprise awakening this week with the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. What about you? Where are you feeling the pressure to release or restructure or start fresh? It might have landed like a shock the way it did for me, or maybe it's been more subtle. But think back through this past week with all this energy. What came up for you? Is there something that just isn't sustainable anymore? Some structure Saturn is asking you to rebuild? Or maybe Uranus tossed in one of those surprises, big or small, that shifted your perspective in an instant. And if you're not quite sure how this eclipse is showing up for you, take a look at your own chart. Where does Gemini fall for you? That's the part of life Uranus is stirring up right now, the place where the surprises and the shakeups are happening. Then check Pisces. That's where Saturn is doing his work, asking you to slow down, set boundaries, or rebuild. And finally, look at Virgo. That's where the new beginning is waiting to emerge, but only after this eclipse clears the space for it. That's how eclipse season works. It clears the space so the new story can take root. So thank you for moving through all of this with me and for always showing up here with me. This podcast is my anchor. It's where you'll always find me. And the Astrology with Alisa podcast YouTube channel will still be part of the journey, just shaped differently than before. Because Saturn is working with me very intentionally now to find the right framework for my voice and my work. And I trust the process because I know my chart and the important role Saturn plays as the ruler of my chart. When you know your own chart, you know how you're wired. You can trust the messages of the universe more fully because you see how they land for you. And that's powerful. If you'd like to better understand your chart, better understand how you're wired, and go deeper into how you can work with this eclipse energy, you can always book a reading with me through the booking link on my website at www.astrologywithalisa.com. Thanks again for listening. Take care, and I'll see you next time.